before I go on, I also want to introduce Mr. Bourne-Wright, Miss Dale Holligan. She's the Senior Environmental Health Officer at the Vector Control Unit, responsible for the fogging, all the fogging you see in Barbados. As Caroline mentioned, she likes to see fogging truck. And she's responsible for the distribution of rodent bait in Barbados. So she is the person that you could direct your questions to relative to the fogging and the rodent bait contribution. As I say, Richard is talented, and he wrote the jingle on Zika. When we approach the very good Calypsonians and so on in Barbados, normally we have to pay them. But this was done at Richard Bourne's studio, and it is being sung by John King at no cost to government. So I'm just going to let you hear that 1 minute jingle on
These
Zika.
mosquitoes real vicious though. I tell you already, I gotta tell you again. The Aedes aegypti mosquito, not one in your friend. They're spreading chikungunya, Zika and dengue. And anytime that they bite you, oh Lord, I miss basic days. Get rid of stagnant water, screen your windows and doors. And anytime you outside working or playing, use repellent, don't be exposed. No way, we don't want no mosquitoes bout here. The Aedes aegypti mosquito, small bite, big threat.
Right. Thank you very much. There are over 3,000 species of mosquitoes in the world. And here in Barbados, we have 3 of those species. And around 6 this evening, a mosquito called the Culex, C-U-L-E-X, it is blackish gray in color, is going to start biting us from 6 this evening until 7 tomorrow morning. That mosquito is hiding all right now. It do not like light. And that mosquito, believe you me, this is October and outside is getting dark already. And America, England, and Canada, those countries are getting cold. And you'll be surprised that birds are flying from those cold countries here in the Caribbean to get warm. And mosquitoes don't only bite us human beings, they also bite animals. So when these birds like egrets and macaws, parrots, and so on come to the Caribbean to get warm, they usually have disease in the blood. And the mosquito, the Culex mosquito, go and bite them. Take infected blood from these mosquitoes and come and bite us and give us a disease called West Nile virus, which interferes with the brain. In public health, we refer to a pig as a porcine animal, a cow as a bovine animal, and a horse naturally is referred to as equine. That same mosquito go and bite horses, take blood from these horses, and give us a disease called equine encephalitis, which interferes with the brain. I know some of you in here, in fact, there are, as I say, 3,000 species of mosquitoes. And these 3,000 species of mosquitoes transmit about 28 to 30 different diseases. And I know some of you in here when chikungunya was rampant in 2014 and so on, 2013, were saying it wasn't a mosquito. Well, I have news for you. That same Culex mosquito also gives you a disease called lymphatic filariasis and elephantiasis. So when the parasite interferes with the lymph node here in your throat, you get your neck swelling very big. When it interferes with the lymph node on your armpit, you get your arms swelling very big. And your feet swell extremely big. And for us men, Caroline and Ryan, myself and Richard, all the men in here, when it interferes with the lymph node in your groin, what you call the Watson kernel, then our testicles swell about as big as this. So there are many persons in Africa, India, Pakistan, and so on walking around with the testicles swell about as big as this. And if you doubt me, I'm going to let Mr. Bourne pull up a video there on lymphatic filariasis and elephantiasis, and I must warn you, it's extremely graphic. This may be one of the next diseases you may very well see in Barbados. Do not take it lightly. Watch this video. It's extremely graphic. Look at it.
Lymphatic filariasis, more commonly known as elephantiasis, afflicts many of the world's most vulnerable communities. A parasite that infects the human lymphatic system is responsible for the condition, which causes swelling and deformity of the limbs and other body parts. Mosquitoes spread the tiny parasitic worm that causes elephantiasis from person to person. The disease is endemic in 83 tropical countries, and Professor David Molyneux of Britain's Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine says anyone living in those places is at risk.
The total numbers of people which have been estimated by the World Health Organization to be at risk in these 83 countries is about 1.3 billion people. So let's say a fifth of the planet is at risk.
There are few conditions in the world more socially alienating. The Global Alliance to Eliminate Lymphatic Filariasis has been at the forefront of those fighting the disease. As the group's video shows, elephantiasis mainly affects the rural poor, forcing infected people like this man from Uganda further into poverty.
Mimi fundi seremala. Inanisumbua kama mtasimama muda mrefu bila kukaa chini. Kama saa 5 au 6.
Washing infected limbs can help ease the suffering, but it does not cure or stop the spread of the condition. This man comes from a village in Tanzania where elephantiasis is endemic.
Ça va un problème parce c'est pas moi celle qui gagne malgré peuple avoir mouvement pour lui.
Set up 9 years ago, the Global Alliance aims to eradicate elephantiasis as a public health threat by 2020. The group has teamed up with the UN World Health Organization and major drug companies such as GlaxoSmithKline and Merck. Andy Bright heads up GlaxoSmithKline's elephantiasis program.
When the program started, there was a global plan produced by the WHO for how you could achieve this goal within 20 years. And progress against that plan is very much on target. So there's a lot of very strong evidence that the program is succeeding and a lot of confidence that in the vast majority of the countries it will be successful before 2020.
The eradication program consists of 2 drugs, albendazole, donated by GlaxoSmithKline, and mectizan, donated by Merck. Those living in endemic areas take 2 pills a year for 5 years. The drugs significantly reduce the number of worm larvae in the blood, which means far fewer mosquitoes carry the infection to those they bite.
We made an agreement with the World Health Organization to donate one of our antiparasitic drugs, albendazole, to every country that needs it until the disease is eliminated. And that's an enormous commitment that'll take 20 years or more and will involve billions of our antiparasitic albendazole.
Despite these efforts, there is much more to do in the fight to eradicate lymphatic filariasis. Populous countries such as Nigeria and Indonesia and others face logistical problems in delivering and implementing the program nationwide. Professor Molyneux says it should be viewed as the most important public health program of our generation.
If we can't afford to implement that intervention within existing health financing environments, I don't believe we could afford to do anything in public health.
Elephantiasis was once considered one of the world's most neglected afflictions, but those fighting it hope that by 2020 the disease will be gone. Rachel Smalley, VOA News, London.
Right, so you see, we have the mosquito here, the Culex mosquito. All we need is the parasite to come. This is a disease that we could very well see. The good thing is that these mosquitoes carry a combination of diseases. So once you eliminate the mosquito, you can eliminate a vast amount of the diseases spread by the mosquito. I say there are 3 species of mosquitoes we have in Barbados, over 3,000. Let's look at the Anopheles mosquito, Anopheles. That mosquito is found at the Grimhall Swamp in Christchurch. It like to breed in what we call brackish water, which is salt and fresh water. That mosquito transmits malaria, which is the most serious disease of all the diseases. It actually comes in 4 different strains: malaria vivax, malaria ovale, falciparum, and malaria I. It's responsible for killing at least 3. When I went to China, I learned that malaria kills 3.5 to 5 million persons in Africa, India, Pakistan, Philippines every year. Very deadly disease. We have the mosquito here. It bites between 5 and 7 p.m. and then 10 and 12 midnight. And contrary to what you think, we give the mosquito the disease. All those mosquitoes, thousands of mosquitoes up there at Grimhall Swamp cannot do you anything. All it takes is someone to go in the swamp with malaria to transmit malaria. Let me show you what I mean. When it was at Morris Bay in 2007, someone came in from one of the other islands with malaria. And they went and lived in St. Peter, St. Lucie. And because it's a disease that have you really down and you don't actually recover from it in full 100%, the person, medication ran out, they did not inform us. And they had to present themselves to the Morris Bay Polyclinic for treatment. And it's a disease that is notifiable. And I was a senior there, and they sent one of my good officers to interview the person. And when the report came on my desk, I started to smile because in the report, the officer instructed the person who had malaria to report to the Morris Bay Polyclinic twice per week. And the second instruction was, when he's traveling around Barbados, do not go past Bridgetown. And that second instruction clearly meant that once he come up here to Bridgetown, and then start going up the Garrison, Hastings, going in the area of the swamp, then that is how we will be concerned. That was like being in prison, so the person leave and went back to the island that they came from because they weren't able to move around Barbados as freely as they like, and they had to present themselves to a polyclinic twice a week for testing. I say the Culex mosquito bites you between 6 in the evening and 7 the following morning and stops feeding. About 12 years ago, I wrote an article for the Nation newspaper when Terry Ali was a journalist there. And he called me after I faxed the article to him, and he said to me, Gas, I want you to give it a caption. And I say to him, you're good at selling papers. You give it a caption. So the following day when it came out in the Nation newspaper, the heading was, Nature's Tag Team Pest. The reason why he put the heading as Nature's Tag Team Pest, when the Culex bite you 6 this evening to 7 tomorrow and stop feeding, the Aedes aegypti, believe you me, takes over and bites us from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening. So what he was saying is that the 2 mosquitoes operate like a tag team. My question to you, between 7 in the morning and 6, where are you? Some of you at work, some of you at school, some of you at play, some of you at leisure. So it means that you leave home feeling well and sometimes go to the environment and get sick. So you should not leave home and go to the environment and say, that environment do not belong to me. I care nothing about the environment. You must be conscious of your environment at all times. The Aedes aegypti mosquito that I just mentioned that bites you between 7 in the morning and 6 transmits yellow fever. And I mentioned the Culex biting birds and biting horses. The Aedes aegypti, in terms of yellow fever, bite monkeys. Why we don't have yellow fever in Barbados is that we have the green monkey, which is not a very good transmitter of yellow fever. But yellow fever is mostly transmitted by the howler monkey, which is found in Trinidad, Guyana, and those South American countries and so on. So the Aedes aegypti transmit yellow fever. You could get a vaccine that could last you for at least 10 years for yellow fever. That same mosquito also transmits chikungunya, dengue, and Zika. For those of you who are listening to me and had thought in 2013, 2014 that it wasn't a mosquito, a lot of persons met us and say it wasn't a mosquito. I have news for you. Let's imagine that I was diabetic, or I had high blood pressure, or I had asthma, or lupus. It means that I would have been sick with the condition. What you don't know is that the mosquito could fly and bite you and give you dengue and chikungunya at the same time. So once you're over 25 years, to have 3 conditions, I having, say, diabetes, and then getting bite by the mosquito, and contracting dengue and chikungunya at the same time, it means that I have had 3 conditions, and my chances of survival will be pretty low. The amount of virus, say that I live in a house with 7 persons. What you don't know is that the Aedes could fly in that house, in my house, so with 7 persons, and give all 7 of us chikungunya. The reason is the amount of virus required to transmit the chikungunya virus is very small. If that same mosquito is carrying the dengue virus flying into my house over 7 persons, it may only be able to give 3 of us dengue, because the amount of blood required to transmit the dengue virus is much larger. That is why mosquitoes cannot transmit AIDS, because the amount of blood that will be required by the mosquito will be at least 100 to 200 times greater than the amount of virus required to transmit dengue and chikungunya. There are some females in here, and they cannot get away from it because we have a God, and is God-given, and it's part of nature, where you see your menstrual cycle every month. And you may want to know where the asking is going with this. Where you produce 1 egg, or maybe 2 eggs every month, which is about 12 eggs per year, or 24 eggs per year. Mosquitoes also have a cycle. Why yours is the menstrual cycle. Mosquitoes have a cycle called the gonotrophic cycle, Gonotrophic, where mosquitoes lay approximately 80 eggs every 3 days. And a mosquito lives for at least 21 days. So when you divide 21 by 3, you get 7. When you multiply 7 by 80, you get 500 and something, 560. So one mosquito produces between 560 to 700 eggs in its lifetime. When we count the amount of premises in Barbados, we arrive at approximately 147,000 premises in Barbados. As Caroline mentioned, in 63 public health districts. We should not be having the amount of mosquito breeding that we're seeing in Barbados. We are flat, but persons are just not adhering to the warnings about mosquito breeding. As I said, 28 to 30 different diseases. You will see Richard has on the board, on the screen, microcephaly. The latest disease we've seen is Zika, which produces microcephaly. I'm not a medical person, but part of our team Richard Dale, myself, is Dr. Allen, the medical officer at St. Philip Polyclinic. We usually tour together. And he have told us that when you look there with the tape around the head, when a baby born, and the circumference of the head is measured, it should measure at least 35 centimeters. But with microcephaly, the virus travels to the placenta of the mother who is pregnant, especially in the first two trimesters, the first 6 months, and travels to the brain. And that part of the head, that back part, we call the true back. You know, when you getting your hair cut to go back to school, that piece at the back of your head, there's an absence of that. In other words, the brain is undeveloped. So it means that when the baby born, the brain is not fully developed, and then the child will not be in a position to know how to bathe its skin, dress itself, put on shoes, and so on. And you are seeing the severity there of microcephaly. And we've had probably over 600 and something suspected cases of Zika in Barbados. And how much confirmed there? For me? 20 or so confirmed. So we do have the problem with the disease. I mentioned microcephaly. The word micro means small. Cephaly means head, means small head. Going back to chikungunya, you'll be surprised to know that chikungunya was first discovered in 1947 in Uganda, in Africa, in 1947 from monkeys, in 1948 from mosquitoes, and 1952 in human beings. And the word chikungunya is an African word, means that which bends up. So just how I'm standing here now by tomorrow and having chikungunya, I'm limp over my knuckles and limbs. And we in the ministry have predicted that when it was really rampant, that between 33% to 65% of Barbadians would have come down with chikungunya, which, looking at 278,000 persons, would have equated to around 75,000, between 75,000 Barbadians and 170,000 Barbadians would have come down with it. So everybody that you actually knew had chikungunya. It was a new disease to Barbados, which means there was no immunity towards it. So that's why so many persons came down with it. In terms of Zika, I spoke about pregnant women, but we, the adults, also have to be concerned with this condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome. Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a result of Zika, affects the nerves. And you will see the nerve endings and so on there, where the nerve, as I said, I'm not a medical person, the nerve in working in a normal, correct way, the nerve skips in a coordinated way. But with Guillain-Barré, it affects the nerves and causes paralysis. And it also heads to your throat and stop you from, you can see the nerve sheath there, stop you from swallowing. So, dengue. We also have dengue. Dengue comes in 4 serotypes. There's no vaccine for dengue fever. We've had thousands of cases in the last probably 20 years and deaths from it here in Barbados. And I just want to walk you through some of the control measures for mosquito breeding. This product here, mosquito dung, is an excellent product for, especially those of you who have water tanks and so on. It is a bacteria, look like a donut. Bacillus thuringiensis is the active ingredient is biologically friendly, available at any hardware. Mosquito dump, pretty cheap, costs about $6 for 2. This latest product here, Aquatain, Aquatain, is also an excellent product that you could purchase for the control of mosquitoes. You will see here I have a plant, and it is not really to decorate the grand cells. This plant is to show you that those of you who have plants, imagine a saucer is under this plant, and you have, say, 4 or 5 of these plants in your house. What happens is sometimes you tend to let the plant too heavy. The excess water goes into the saucer and rise and touch around the plant pot. And then you see this green algae line getting developed around here. That green algae line is called the meniscus, meniscus. Will you believe the Aedes aegypti mosquito fly and look for that line called the meniscus and deposit the eggs there, and the eggs can remain 3 years without water. So you have your friends in for crop over, you're busy carrying them to the Calypso tent and all this thing. When they're gone back, you forgot to wet the plant, and when they're gone back, you rush to start reviving the plant. And you believe the more water you pour, the better it will come back. But what happens is when that excess water goes in the saucer and rise up and touch that line, the meniscus, you get the mosquitoes breeding. My advice to you is to go to your fridge, take 6 to 8 or 10 of these cubes and rest them on the top of the plant. The plant will be more healthy because it's getting that drip irrigation process from the water constantly throughout the day. And the soil will absorb that ice water and no excess water will reach the saucer. But if you go home now and say, well, Gaskin said, put some ice cubes to the plant, and you go home and when you check, you see some water in your plant saucer, have no fear. Go to your salt jar and take 2 to 3 pinches of salt and drop it in the water. And that will change the surface tension of the water, and you will not get any mosquitoes breeding there. For those of you who have toilets and they don't have a cover and you're traveling overseas, get some salt, pour the salt in the toilet bowl, and that will take care of the mosquitoes until you get back. We in environmental health, I'm seeing Richard is showing you a lot of things there. We are seeing, for instance, this: never throw your water out of your plant saucer down the drain. You should look for a dry area around the house and throw the water there. You need to scrub the size of the container because eggs may be there. You also need to do it with your dog bowls. We are finding a lot of mosquitoes breeding in dog bowls. You throw the water out, but what you didn't do is, and you throw back clean water in for the dog, but what you didn't do is scrub the algae from around the dog bowl. You need to put your roof gutter, don't put it at 180 degrees. You need to grade it. You will see the slope there, which is showing you. We are showing you everything. You need to put a good gradient on the roof gutters so that that water will flow off. We are also finding, and this is going to surprise you, we are finding when persons brush the teeth and put the toothbrush in the toothbrush holder, we are finding that toothbrush holder now is breeding mosquitoes. Water dripping from the toothbrush into the toothbrush holder and breeding mosquitoes. You need to take care of your tires around the home. You could punch holes, 6 holes at the top, 6 holes at the bottom, so that don't care you turn the tire, the water will leak out. You can also make a tire garden with the tires, or you could take them to a tire dealer, or you could put them under a shade. There's a handout that we would have given you that looks at 14 areas around the home that you should check. This is it here. Your bird baths, your roof gutters, water tanks. You need to check all of those areas for mosquito breeding. I'm going to touch on a very ticklish topic. You know, Carly mentioned I'm an old Ellerslie boy. He also went to Ellerslie. But I know in 1970, the administration, the Democratic Party at the time, Harold Barrow and so on, at that time in 1970 saw mosquitoes even way back 46 years ago as a serious threat to Barbadian life. And they went to Parliament and they passed the Health Services Control of Mosquitoes 1970 regulations. And I want you to listen very carefully. The Health Services Control of Mosquitoes 1970 regulations. This is the book that we take you to court with. When Richard come by me and he find the mosquitoes, he write up one of these. And we're a little more gentle than the police. I drive out of here without a seatbelt, the police can report me, and by the next 2 weeks I'll be before the court. We're a little more generous. We give you a warning. So the persons, these persons here in this book will have had a warning. These are persons who we have found mosquitoes at. So the book is like a raffle book. So it said 2. So Richard is sending me a notice. 2, Maurice Gaskin of Fairfield Blackrock. You are hereby notified on today's the 27th day of October 2014. Mosquito larvae were found on your premises situated at Fairfield Inn. And he will put in a bucket, in a drum, in a tire, or whatever. Contrary to the mosquito regulations, is contrary to the 1970 regulations. And then go on to state, should there be a reoccurrence of this nuisance, you will be prosecuted. So Richard carried me before the court, which we have done. We had about 6 persons before the law court in the last 2 to 3 years for mosquito breeding. It gives the magistrate, listen to this, the option, if Richard carried me to court, of fining me $5,000 and or 3 months in prison. And if Richard carried me to court and I go down court today, down here in town, the magistrate said, well, Gassi never had a conviction, pay the court $800. What the magistrate is going to do, Carly, is instruct Richard, after fining me today, to go back and check at my premises tomorrow. And for each day, my premises remain like that, is additional $200. So the fine is $5,000 and or 3 months in prison. And for every day the offense continues is additional $200. Do not let it happen to you. We are going to be placing persons before the law court if they do not hear. This canister, Richard's paying sometime in the Bridgetown port. You'll be surprised to know that when Virgin Atlantic touched down around 1:30, 2 o'clock today, Norm is a jumbo jet. The first person that goes to the plane door, Ryan, is the inspector. And Virgin must hand us about 16 or 17 of these empty. This is the spray that sprays the aircraft. And they must hand us 16 or 17 of these empty. If they don't, we have the right to make them close the door back and spray the aircraft. If you take the swarm Carolina and you spray, you will see centipedes, millipedes, all types of things, because your environment don't know this. They know the other insecticides. And while I'm on insecticides, Carolina, if you get paid last month, September, and you bought, I'm not permitted to mention a brand, but if you bought one insecticide last month, and you get paid days yesterday, I think, you should buy a different insecticide. Reason is, for those of you who are